My friends.
Hello, friends. If you're anything like me, you felt an uncontrollable urge to turn off the latest CNN-hosted candidate debates and flip around to more entertaining fare, like watching Jack Bauer threaten to cut some evildoer's balls off. Maybe you flipped that channel right away, or maybe you held out as long as you possibly could, with Wolf Witz stuttering,
of colleagues,
candidates mumbling,
I don't think
the key to
McCain insinuating that everyone was his friend,
My friends.
and every single person on stage thanking the troops.
and incidentally a thank you for his service.
Thank you.
I want to tell you thank you.
Multiply the number of candidates on stage against the number of military families in the audience, and that's a lot of thank yous. Maybe Blitzer could use his patented show of hands approach to weed out any candidates that hate the troops.
if there's someone here who doesn't support the troops, raise your hand.
You could shave off 40 minutes right there. It is cutting-edge improvements like that we're bringing to the debates. Instead of a Democratic debate and a Republican debate, we've merged the two together into what could only be described as the United States' very first pre-nomination multi-party presidential candidate debate, or the Bestest candidate debate, for short. We'll provide you with fact-checking, and we'll also provide you with information to help contextualize the debate. We'll also throw in some completely useless information. And we also provide the one thing that no one has asked for, but we know everyone wants. Every time Hillary Clinton speaks, turtles are shown, making sweet, sweet love. Brace yourself. The Bestest candidate debate is about to begin. Tonight's topic, the Middle East. Bestest candidate debate.
I'm Wolf Blitzer, and I'm with CNN.
Knowing everything you know right now, was it a mistake for us to invade Iraq?
If you're saying let's turn back the clock, and Saddam Hussein had opened up his country to IAEA inspectors, and they'd come in and they'd found that there were no weapons of mass destruction, had Saddam Hussein therefore not violated United Nations resolutions, we wouldn't be in the conflict we're in.
Sending inspectors back into Iraq to determine whether Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and using coercive diplomacy was not an unreasonable act. What I did not count on, and what none of us did, is that he had no intention to allow the inspectors to finish their job. We would have known that Saddam Hussein did not have WMD, and we would not have gone and invaded Iraq.
The question was, knowing what you know right now, not what you knew then.
It's an unreasonable hypothetical. It's a non sequitur. It's a non-null set kind of question.
If I had known then what I know now, I never would have voted to give the president authority.
I was wrong. I should never have voted for this war. He deserves credit for being against this war from the beginning. He was right. I was wrong.
Do you think someone who authorized the use of force to go to war should be president?
We have killed more Americans than was done on the 11th of September. Because of their decision, that disqualifies them for president. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that they don't have moral judgment.
You didn't think the war was the right thing to do?
I don't think it's a disqualifier. People were making their best judgments at the time. What I saw was a weak case on the part of this administration, the sort of fear-mongering that I think, John, you've referred to.
Knowing what you know right now, was it a good decision?
Absolutely the right thing to do. We see Iraq in a vacuum. Iraq is part of the overall terrorist war against the United States.
Remember Vietnam. All the dominoes are going to fall. Southeast Asia is going to go communist. How do we know what will happen? I do know this, that the insurgency is successful because the population sustains that insurgency. Period.
This is an enormous distraction from the battle that does have to be waged in Afghanistan and rooting out al-Qaeda. That is something that we have failed to do. We have the opportunity to be successful there, but we have to finish the job. The effort in Iraq has greatly weakened our efforts there.
Did you read the National Intelligence Estimate, which included all the caveats on whether or not there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq?
I did not read that particular document. I received hundreds of briefings.
Chairman Bob Graham of Florida cited that specifically, National Intelligence Estimate, as one of the reasons that he voted against it. So obviously there was some pertinent information there.
General Petraeus says it's not working in September. What should the U.S. do then?
Demand the al-Maliki government to vote as to whether or not they want the United States to stay in Iraq. We've been there 4 years. Give the government the responsibility of voting. And if they vote no, we should redeploy our forces outside. There are 18 territories in Iraq, should elect their state leaders. And if they do so, the Shiites will elect Shiites, Sunnis will elect Sunnis, Kurds will elect Kurds. People will go to those particular territories, and you get rid of this civil war internecine.
This policy in Iraq has failed. It is a civil war in that country. Everyone who's looked at this issue has drawn the conclusion
that there is no military solution to it.
Today's the birthday of Ronald Reagan. We all would believe that Ronald Reagan is the one who ended the Cold War, and Ronald Reagan is the one who helped bring about the collapse of the Soviet Union. But there's a group of people who don't believe that, and that's the Taliban. They believe they brought about the demise of the Soviet Union because of the way they fought in Afghanistan. It is not the size of the dog in the fight, it is the size of the fight in the dog, and we underestimate how fierce this dog is and how determined they are to destroy every last one of us.
We should come home. It was a mistake to go, so it's a mistake to stay. If we made the wrong diagnosis, we should change the treatment. You can't enforce our goodness like the neocons preach with an armed force. It doesn't work. Woodrow Wilson was telling us about that in promoting democracy a long time ago. It doesn't work, and we have to admit it. We're not making progress there, and we should come home. The weapons weren't there, and our national security was not threatened. We're more threatened now by staying.
We did not lose the war in Iraq, and that's not the sort of thing you say when you have men and women in harm's way.
I hope to God it does work. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we pacify Iraq. However, if it is apparent that we cannot, then we have to do and tell the Iraqis the exact same thing that Benjamin Franklin said when he came out of the convention in 1787, and somebody said to him, "Dr. Franklin, what have you given us?" And he said, "A republic if you can keep it." It is exactly that time and is exactly that thing that we have to say to the Iraqi government. We have given you this. We bought it with our blood and sweat. It is now up to you to keep it. And I want the Iraqis to be, in fact, patrolling Baghdad. If they need vehicles, you let them have the vehicles. But I want them patrolling their city and putting their lives at risk. Then we move out.
My friends, this is a transcendent struggle between good and evil. Everything we stand for and believe in is at stake here. We can win. We will never surrender. They will.
This terrorist war began way back in the 1970s. They attacked us in 1993 in New York. They attacked us again in 2001 in a horrible way. And I believe that what we're doing in Iraq, if we can get it right, is going to help reduce the risk for this country. And if we get it wrong, this is going to be much, much worse for us. Part of what we have to do, and we haven't done right, is take on that responsibility of nation building. We created that responsibility for ourselves. People can only embrace democracy when they have an orderly existence. And we have to help provide that. We didn't want that role, but it is our role.
We are not going to be able to continue to throw our troops at a civil war and be able to succeed.
Does the Bush administration, Senator, deserve any credit?
I think there are some things they've done well. I think they've cracked down on some of the financial networks. I think that is important. They have, unfortunately, not strengthened our alliances with other countries. One of the most important things that we're going to have to do to be successful in rooting out these networks is to make sure that we have the cooperation of other nations.
We've not been told the truth about this war from the beginning by this president. The truth now is there are 160,000 forces in Iraq. They're in harm's way. 70% of all the injuries are caused by those IEDs. We know that if we put in these mine-resistant vehicles, these V-shaped hull vehicles, we could save 2/3 of the lives and 2/3 of the injuries. My colleagues joined me when I proposed fast-forwarding the funding for that so we could get 2,500 of them into the field by August. If we had voted no and stopped this, it would have delayed that as long as there is a single troop in Iraq. If I take action by funding them, I increase the prospect they'll live or not be injured. I cannot and will not vote no to fund them.
Joe has a legitimate perspective. It is not easy to vote for cutting off funding because the fact is there are troops on the ground.
We don't have a president who is willing to change course, and I think it was time to say enough is enough. I thought the best way to support our troops was to try to send a very strong message that they should begin to come home. Each of us is trying in our own way to bring the war to an end.
Everybody supports the troops. And everybody knows that.
This is George Bush's war. He is responsible for this war. He started the war. He mismanaged the war. He escalated the war. And he refuses to end the war. We are trying to end the war.
The president has now announced, just the other day, he said that this was like Korea. Keep in mind, we've been there 6 decades in the Korean Peninsula. The best way for us to support the troops is to ensure that we are not continuing to try to impose a military solution on what is essentially a political problem in Iraq.
Just say no money. The war's over. Senator Clinton says, well, this is George Bush's war. Oh, no. There's a teachable moment here. This war belongs to the Democratic Party because the Democrats were put in charge by the people in the last election with the thought that they were going to end the war. Well, they haven't.
It was facilitated by the Democrats. They brought the resolution up. One of them co-authored it here, standing here. And so it's sure it's George Bush's war, but it's a Democrats' war also.
The way to end the war is for the Congress to use its constitutional authority to fund. They should send the bill to the president with a timetable for withdrawal, which they did. The president vetoed, then it came back, and then it was the moment of truth. I said throughout the lead-up to this vote that I was against a funding bill that did not have a timetable for withdrawal, that it was critical for the Congress to stand firm. They were given a mandate by the American people. Senator Clinton and Senator Obama did not say anything about how they were going to vote until they appeared on the floor of the Senate. They were among the last people cast the right vote, but there is a difference between leadership and legislature.
The fact is that I opposed this war from the start. So you were about 4.5 years late on leadership on this issue.
We have 50 votes in the United States Senate, less of a majority in the House than any time other than the last 8 years. You're going to end this war when you elect a Democratic president. You need 67 votes to end this war. I love these guys who tell you they're going to stop the war. The truth of the matter is, the only one that's emboldened the enemy has been George Bush by his policies. Not us funding the war. We're funding the safety of those troops there till we can get 67 votes.
Hold on. What if U.S. withdrawal from Iraq does lead to genocide?
There is sectarian conflict already. Our troops have become a target. Move them to Afghanistan to fight al-Qaeda.
If the U.S. had intelligence that could take out Osama bin Laden, even though some innocent civilians would die in the process.
It would depend on how many innocent civilians.
Yeah, I mean, my husband actually tried to take out bin Laden. He did fire missiles at a training camp that we had intelligence that that's where bin Laden was, because by that time, bin Laden had already bombed our embassies. One of the jobs of a president is being very reasoned in approaching these issues, and I don't think it's useful to be talking in these kind of abstract, hypothetical terms.
How would you solve the problem we have with Iran?
The president's policy has been we don't talk in this administration to people we don't agree with or that we think are bad. All during the Cold War, we always talked to the Soviet Union. They had missiles pointed at us. They had leaders who said they would bury us. They waged wars around the world. We never stopped talking. Iran having a nuclear weapon is absolutely unacceptable. We have to try to prevent that at all costs, but we need to start with diplomacy. Every so often, Condi Rice go around the world and show up somewhere and make a speech, and occasionally they even send Dick Cheney. That's hardly diplomatic in my view. We won't know until we get a president who is committed to diplomacy. Only then will we be able to make a clear assessment.
The Iranian people actually rallied for America on the streets of Tehran after September the 11th. There's a long history of pro-American sentiment in Iran. They have a president who's politically unpopular. We don't have economic leverage over the Iranians, but the Europeans do, the European banking system does. We'll make the nuclear fuel available to you, the international community, but we'll control it. You can't weaponize it. We're going to put a clear set of economic incentives on the table. The alternative, the stick, there are going to be serious economic sanctions. We need to drive a wedge between the Iranian people and this radical leader.
If you got word Ahmadinejad were on the verge of having a nuclear bomb, what would you do?
I would do away with the policy of regime change. What we're saying to everybody in Iran is, look, by the way, give up the one thing that keeps us from attacking you, and after that we're going to attack you. They are not a year away or 2 years away. They're a decade away from being able to weaponize. We have to understand how weak that government is. They import almost all of their refined oil. But at the end of the day, if they posed a missile, stuck it on a pad, I'd take it out.
When the Osiris reactor was hit in '86, 6 F-18s came over the horizon and knocked that out. They didn't need anything but conventional weapons. Probably it's going to take a little more than that. I don't think it's going to take tactical nukes.
You don't take options off the table. People are testing the United States of America. We have resolve, and we have the strength to protect our interests and to protect people who love liberty. Now watch the Democrats. They don't think there's a war on terror.
One of the central problems of the Middle East is the desire for Iran to dominate that portion of the world because of what they are doing. And that is why I believe that they are seeking this kind of nuclear capacity. That is one of the reasons why we are, in fact, in Iraq. And that's why our soldiers, when they fight and die there, are in fact serving the interests of the United States. We need to communicate directly with the Iranians that we are going to offer them an opportunity to work with us, but we are also going to say that having a nuclear weapon is unacceptable. They need to understand it, and all options are on the table by the United States in that instance.
They're a nuclear threat because they are the biggest state sponsor of terrorism, and they can hand nuclear materials to terrorists. We saw just last week in New York an attempt by Islamic terrorists to attack JFK Airport. 3 weeks ago, an attempt to attack Fort Dix. These are real problems. This war is not a bumper sticker. This war is a real war. The problem the Democrats make is they're in denial. That's why you hear things like...
What it is, it's a bumper sticker. As President of the United States, I will do absolutely everything to find terrorists where they are, to stop them before they can do harm to us. Every tool available. But what this global war on terror bumper sticker was intended to do was for George Bush to use it to justify everything he does. The ongoing war in Iraq, Guantanamo, Abu Ghraib, spying on Americans, torture. None of those things are okay. They are not the United States of America.
The Patriot Act has undermined civil rights in this country. Benjamin Franklin once said that those who would give up their essential liberties to achieve a sense of security deserve neither.
Just practicing my Mike Gravel impersonation. Well, the original debate, of course, goes on much longer. They talk about immigration, gays in the military, healthcare. It's all good stuff if you have an attention span. In closing, if you felt this debate video was in some way unfair to a particular party or candidate, please post a comment and let us know immediately. We just couldn't live with ourselves knowing that we'd been unfair. Thank you for your time, which you'll never get back.